Okay, everybody. We're going to cover our last two chapters, so please bear with me. I'm going to try to cut this one a little shorter. It tends to run long, and it's hard to get it downloaded to my YouTube. So let's. If I'm looking away from you, it's because of the camera on my computer. When I'm looking straight at you, but I look like I'm looking off to the side, as well as I'm also looking at my PowerPoint. So I'm not trying to avoid you. That's the word for it. But anyway, we're looking at symbolic interactionism. This is my area, one of my central areas of background. When I studied that in Michigan, I studied with two well-known symbolic interactionists. I had Dr. Meltzer was his name. He was a really older professor, but still at it. And he goes all the way back. He was a student of Mead's. And Dr. Larry T. Reynolds, a well-known sociologist who's written a lot of books on symbolic interactionism, may be quoted. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the back of the references on this particular chapter, but you can look for yourself and see if you may see a Larry T. Reynolds or Meltzer, but both of them influential. And then I studied with a critical symbolic interactionist, two of them at York University in Toronto for my dissertation research. And my research with Asian Americans in South Carolina was based on a symbolic interactionist, critical symbolic interactionist study of Native American community. In actuality, as we speak, I have an article coming out in one of the flagship publications of symbolic interactionism. It's Studies in Symbolic Interactions, the name of it. It's a hardback annual. And I have an article that will be published in the next issue, which is coming out in late August. I'm very happy about that publication. But let's just look at some of the major ideas. Bloomer, Goffman, Hochschild. The main thing for Bloomer, he really played a big part in defining early symbolic interactionism. Again, the ideas were influenced by Weber and Simmel. Weber's notion of social action, for example. Reading selection for symbolic interactionism, and we also look a little bit at dramaturgy, which is a subfield in symbolic interactionism. The methodological position of symbolic interactionism, the presentation of self in everyday life, silence, Goffman's work, working on feeling, and the managed heart by Hochschild. I like all of these. I've used both of these actually in some of my research. Very, very rich perspective for doing sociological research. Anyway, let's see here. I'm going to start with Bloomer. Bloomer had a couple of central concepts I'm just going to touch base with, or ideas that sort of underpin the perspective. Bloomer said interpretation entails constructing the meaning of another's actions as well as one's own. So this notion of the looking glass self kind of notion, that we adjust our behaviors to each other as we're interacting, as we're interpreting the behaviors of the other. We're also taking ourselves into effect. And if you want to go ahead a little bit in dramaturgical terms, that's when we're engaged in interaction with each other, we're performing our roles that we're in. And so we try to interact in a way that gives a good impression, generally, unless we're in an argument. But to try to put our best foot forward with each other. We take each other and ourselves included in effect. So I'm also watching the other individual, I'm interpreting their behavior, and also at the same time reflecting on my own. How is that person seeing me in the way in which I'm conveying meaning or interacting? Meaning is not released by or inherent in the actions themselves. This is an important notion underpinning symbolic interactionism, as the behaviors would have us to believe. So unlike the behaviors who see how meaning is sort of fixed in the behaviors themselves, that meaning is released from that inherency, that actually for human beings, what objects mean to us is given by us, and that we interpret what things mean. Two individuals sitting in a classroom may interpret that professor's deliverance in the classroom in two totally different ways. One might disdain the professor's way of interacting. The other one may love it, right? So the meaning is not inherent in the object, the professor, it's in the meanings given. And this is a prime underlying assumption of symbolic interactionism as a micro social psychological theory. I call it, or we can call it everyday sociology. Is that the universe out there, unlike the social theories, the macro structural theories, see the world laid out there in these large structures to determine our behavior. That's not the way this is. Top-down model for symbolic interactionism and other micro-sociological theories is from the ground up. It's not objective, it's subjective. That society exists in our minds. And it's we individuals that give meaning to our universe. It goes back to that biblical notion that human beings name the world. We have classified the world in our own image, so to speak. If we didn't have language among humans, we didn't have language to share and make meaning, because we are meaning-making creatures, then the universe would be meaningless. There's no meaning laid out there in the universe. It's a blank slate. It's we humans that are giving meanings to it through our communicating through language. We're symbolic creatures. We use symbols to communicate and to name things. And that's everything. I mean, it's hard to escape that. We interpret all day long, give meanings that a lot of times superficial things. What did the cat do? I hate it when people infer that the dog or the cat did something intentionally, like it's a human being. But we anthropomorphize a lot of people anthropomorphize their pets, and so Billy the dog, he did that because he's mad at me for what I did to him yesterday, that really animals more or less fall within the behaviors area of reaction. But anyway, you see what I'm saying? I hope so. Self-consciousness has, Bloomer says, self-consciousness has the most profound impact on social life, for it makes possible group and joint action. By being self-conscious of ourselves, and what they mean by that is our ability to reflect on how we are engaging with others as we interpret how others are engaging with us. So it's that sense of empathy, empathetic possibility of being empathetic towards other and being self-reflective in that we're concerned how others maybe are seeing us, even if subconsciously. In order to align their behaviors with one another, individuals must construct a shared interpretation by becoming an object to oneself of each other's gestures. In order to be able to share and to come to a common interpretation of things, we have to become aware of ourselves as objects to ourselves, and in that way, then we can come to agreements about, an interpretation, or we may not come to an agreement. That's what another big term in symbolic interactionism is the notion of that the social world is negotiated. That is what we see around us. Our world today is the outcome of it's a negotiated order. We call it society. It's a negotiated order. It's not done by one individual. It's negotiated among human beings. So let's just look quickly at the three premises of symbolic interactionism. 1, human beings act towards things on the basis of the meaning that things have for them. So again, the notion that things don't just mean something outside of our giving meaning to it, whatever that is, right? I could use a million examples all day long. Flags are just an object with paint on them, but they mean something in terms of your perspective on that flag. You know, you might see if you saw a Nazi flag, you may take the meanings for that and be very highly negative. That's a symbol of fascism. You know, Southern flag. You know, one person might be convinced that Southern flag represents heritage in some way or tradition, and so that way they feel that it should be displayed. Another person might see it as a symbol of oppression, slavery, murder, and so they have a very negative feel to it. They put it in the category with the Nazi flag, right? A symbol of oppression. Again, it's just a piece of cloth with paint on it. For a Martian that came to Earth, it wouldn't mean anything, right? Or a person that's never seen it before, they'll say, well, what the hell does that represent? I don't, it's just maybe it's a tablecloth or something. It's we that give the meanings to things. And we do that all day long. We give meanings to people's way they dress, how, especially nonverbal gestures, their actions, what they say to us, all of that all of that is ripe for being interpreted. It's not, the meaning is not just laid out there. Some things are a little bit more commonsensical to us because the meanings of certain types of interactions have become institutionalized such that in some ways we take them for granted. So, for example, when you walk into a sociology class, you've been in classrooms so much before that you don't have to do a lot of what we call interpretive work in that situation. You already know what. So we take it for granted that social, it's still a negotiated order. And if something outlandish happens during class period, all of a sudden we've got to get into interpretive. We'll be interpreting what's happening, there's a dog. If you hear the dog barking, it's not mine. It's the neighbor's. Secondly, the meaning of such things is derived from, I just interpreted that situation for you. See that? The meaning of such things is derived from or arises out of the social interaction that one is having with one's fellows. So meaning arises as we interact with others. And also, because of that, the meanings are handled in and also as well as modified. An interpretive process used by the person in dealing with the things he or she encounters. So it's saying here that meanings are also modified as within ongoing symbolic interactionism. That interaction in the term symbolic interactionism, that our society is possible because of human beings, and whether it's a small group of just two individuals or a larger group, we are interacting with each other. And it's through that interacting, using symbolic interaction, meaning using language. And so we're symbolic creatures. We use symbols to communicate with each other, whether it be verbal symbols, but it also can be material symbols that we use that conveys meaning, right? So when you go to a high-class job interview, you might be dressed to the tilt, and that conveys meaning. If you go to, let's say if I was a professor, my first job, though we do profs, especially sociologists, and I would have to say some other discipline. Down on a daily basis, we kind of dress down, for our classes. But to go for the job interview for your job in your discipline, you're probably going to, if you went there with holes in your jeans and an old dirty t-shirt, then, your impression management, you're going to not be in a good standing. You see that you would be interpreted as being a sloppy, non-caring person simply by the way you dress. Right? I'm skip ahead. One of the methodological positions of symbolic interactionism, one of the methods that we use, one of the primary, not the only one, is qualitative methods. We don't tend to do statistics. We do field research, participant observation, we do ethnographic style research. That's what I did for my ethnography of the tribe in South Carolina that I spent a lot of time with. So it tends to be qualitative participant observation. We do unstructured and structured interviewing of people. Why would we want to observe people and then also to listen to their conversations, either with others or with ourselves, and record that? Why would we want to ask questions of people during interviews? From this perspective, it's because we're looking at, let's see what number, slide 10. Methodological position of symbolic interactionism is meaning and interaction interpretation. Because that's what we see as the makeup of society, is this ongoing interaction and interpreting and making meaning together. So we rely on those field methods, interviewing, because we want to, and observation, we want to see how people are actually acting in the field, because many times there can be discrepancies between what people say they do, which is what we call ideal culture, and what they actually do, and that's their real culture. That we see that in our own everyday life. Sometimes we say things about ourselves, but people don't observe it in our behaviors. So that's important. So we look at behaviors, but also we interview people to find out what things mean to them. Ongoing storytelling. And we do that very consciously, because we don't, as an analyst, as a ethnographer, for example, we don't want to overstep ourselves and read into behaviors that may not mean the same thing that it does to the people in that are the participants, right? We don't want to bias a study by just giving our opinion. That's what people do to groups all day long. From the outside, a lot of times we stereotype groups from the outside because it's a quick way just to make quick judgments, and we have that tendency. For us symbolic interactionists, though, we want to get what it means to the people themselves that are in that subculture, for example. So if you're studying a gang, it's not because I want to give meaning to what they're doing. I want to find out from them. What's the real reason you join a gang? What are some of the satisfactions you gain? How do you interact with others? How do you interpret this situation, that situation? That's the main goal, right? We don't want to stereotype. We want to allow others to understand any group, whether it's a legitimate group or a deviant subculture, and what is social life in that situation. And many times we find a lot of surprising events that will go against mainstream stereotypes, for example. Goffman is the one who gave us his work on dramaturgy. I would hope that most of you have been exposed to dramaturgical analyses. I'm just going through here. But he's the one that gave us these few, he looked at society as a social theater. And just like theater, we're all just players on a stage, especially that front stage. So here's his conceptual tools. He's got the front and back stages, the setting in which the interaction is taking place, audience, performance on the front stage. Perhaps most provocatively, performer and character are all parts of the repertoire of terms used to examine the often unspoken and taken for granted subtleties that structure the interaction order, that presenting the self. He's the one that wrote the book, Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. We rely heavily on when we're interacting with others, and whatever that might be, that's front stage, even if it's with our mothers, right? Or if we're with our wives, our husbands, our children, right? As parents, we're playing out social roles. Goffman says the way we play those roles is, and he wants to know how people really do it. So how people really do it is that we try to put our best foot forward in those roles. We want to get a certain feedback from our audience. So we want our children to think, Dad's a great parent. Yes, I love him because, he's a good parent. Those are the kind of things that we search for. And there's people that search for bad feedback as well. And, what we call in that situation is some people, for whatever those reasons are and whatever the situations are, may have inherited a bad self-image and in that respect, a kid, for example, that's been told they're bad all their life may seek bad attention. We know what that, we've heard this before. So they still may be doing impression management, but it's dysfunctional. It's getting negative attention instead of good attention. Maybe they want to send the impression because they think that it's attractive. Let's say, the notion of the bad guy, the bad character, and that they may think that females are attracted to the bad guy over the good guy. So these young guys out here, they'll act real bad and, try to let the people think they're really tough and, this and that. That's impression management. They're sending this message to their audience and hopefully they're getting they may be getting some positive feedbacks from that. But you can use dramaturgy to look at just about any kind of interactional situation. It's great to look at relationships. You're looking at presidential campaigns. It can be bigger stuff like looking at presidents or politicians and how that they use impression management on the front stage. And the front stage is where we're interacting. Backstage is where we go to let our hair down. And it's in that backstage region that we can be more ourselves or our fuller selves. And in that situation also we tend to prepare ourselves for the next entry onto the front stage. That next, let's say you're going from being in a university classroom over next when you're in your car driving, you're in your backstage. And then when you get to where you're going to work, you're entering a new front stage. And sometimes we prepare for that. Sometimes we mentally prepare. I've got to talk to so-and-so today. What am I going to say to them? This kind of thing. Am I dressed well? How do I look for work today? These kinds of things. Let's move on. I could give you some great, wonderful examples, just don't have time. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to maybe ask you guys to give me some examples of some of this, especially this next one, especially this one about Hochschild's development of the sociology of emotions. And highly influenced by Goffman's dramaturgy. She looks at the same thing, but Goffman mainly looked at thinking. He didn't pay attention a lot to emotions. So she theorized, this is the way this happened. So she saw this blank spot and she filled it by looking at, hey, what about emotions? People also involved in impression management work on their emotions. It's not just natural, So we show certain different emotional states in different situations and settings. Emotion work, so the two things to distinguish, emotion work is something we do in many different situations, at home and friends and relationships. Emotional labor, the difference is only that with emotional labor is because we're laboring, we're in a job position, occupational setting, and we're managing our emotions to get a wage, to get payment, right? Thus, inner feelings are managed in order to produce an outward display as part of one's job. Right? Emotional labor, however, often exacts high cost from the worker by having to manage that emotion. And I like to say, in most jobs, positions where you're dealing with the public will be involved in some way with emotional labor. Also, in those situations, we have to deal with micromanagement from managers and bosses. That involves emotional labor. as well. You're trying to keep your salary coming in, but in order to keep working there, you got to show a certain attitude, and you got to be happy, and you've got to defer power to your bosses. But the one, a really great example, I think they may have used it in the textbook and looking at emotional labor, is that of being a waiter or waitress. Many of you have done this, and I've done it myself in Nashville. I lived there. I was a waiter in a lot of different places, and how you have to manage your labor in order to get your tips. If you're a bartender, there's different jobs where you can get tips, from your labor. Her famous study is with airline stewardess. Study this, read about it. Another important comment is the commercial reshaping of our emotions. She calls it the commodification of feelings. It's not experienced alike by all. The demands for emotion management are shaped by both our social class background, our gender relations, such that middle-class workers and women are more susceptible to commodification of their emotive experiences because it's demanded by such, The higher up if you're college educated going into professional jobs, you're expected highly to manage your emotions. You're not going to last long in a job, professional job, if you're emotional, if you're a wreck, and you're always swinging in emotions up and down, you're going to have a difficult time relationships with your managers, bosses, your supervisors, and other workers. So that tends to be the case. Anyway, I'll let you read the rest of this, and I'm going to put on our discussion board. I'll put up one on emotion labor and emotional work as well. And so maybe you guys can talk about some events in your own life where or something that's ongoing where you have to use emotional work, emotional labor in your work setting, for example. And I think that would be informative. It's kind of fun, to see what other people have had to experience. I've got some hilarious stories, but unfortunately, and I would love to tell them to you, but unfortunately, we have time limit on my YouTube, so but maybe we'll do it there. All right. I'm going to also go ahead and do your globalization chapter, the last chapter. So talk to you soon.